Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brian Thatcher, and welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's a show that aims to provide hope, an avenue for healing, and one that will help you and hopefully help you learn and understand the great mercy of God. Today, I have with me Father Tim Byerley from New Jersey. He's a pastor at St. Peter Church. It's going to be an incredible show because not only being a pastor at a church in New Jersey, he's a Vice-Postulator for the beatification cause of Maria Esperanza. Maybe many of you know about her, probably many of you don't. She lived an incredible life. Her process is being studied for beatification. She was a mystic, and Father's been working on this pretty much full time since 2010. Now, who was Maria Esperanza? She was the central figure in the apparitions in Betania, Venezuela. And I have to say, Father, what got me so excited about Maria Esperanza when I was just getting into Divine Mercy, just in the early phases, back in the early 90s. At that same time, a friend had sent me a photograph of a Eucharistic miracle from Betania, and I began to study Eucharistic miracles. And I was on like a parallel track of studying Divine Mercy and the Eucharist. And as one gets into this, you realize it's one and the same. The Jesus in the image behind me is the Jesus in the Eucharist. Father Byerley knew Maria Esperanza since 1994, and he's worked with the Roman postulator for the cause, Dr. Andrea Ambrosi. So, Father, how in the world did a priest from New Jersey get involved with Maria Esperanza?
It's a good question to start with, Brian. Maria Esperanza, after the apparition, the main apparition on March 25th, 1985 began, and others subsequent to that in Venezuela, in that sanctuary called Betania. Maria Esperanza started to receive invitations to travel and speak about the apparitions and the message of Our Lady. At that time, there were an awful lot of Marian conferences being held, both in Latin America and North America. So it brought her to North America quite often. She was invited, and of course, the people would cover her expenses that come up. And there was a prayer group in New Jersey, the leaders of which I was friendly with. And when they would have Maria Esperanza in town, they would invite me, and she came in rather frequently. It almost seemed like whenever she came to the United States, she would make a detour one way or the other through New Jersey. And so she was here quite frequently, and I had numerous opportunities to meet her at that time. I didn't go to too many of her services in those early days, or I really weren't her service. What would happen normally, she'd be speaking at a conference, or she would be at a large church, and she would always want a priest, a pastor, to say Mass beforehand, and then she would speak afterwards, and she would then receive the people one at a time. And sometimes, 1,000 people could be in that church, and she would take each one individually, sometimes going to 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning, out of sheer compassion for those souls that the Lord sent her. She said, sometimes the pastor would say, Miss Brown, look, just give everybody a blessing, and we'll cut it at midnight, or we'll cut it at 2, and so on. She said, no, those people came, the Lord sent them to me, and I'm obliged, and I'm not leaving until I see the last one. And so some people it's ironic, some people would come and see a huge crowd, and they would go home for a couple hours and come back, and then get in the back, the line had grown shorter, and they would jump right in there and have their moment with Maria Esperanza.
Didn't she have apparitions in an early age and then throughout her life?
Yes, she had numerous mystical experiences throughout her life with various saints and our Blessed Mother, Jesus. It was just part and parcel of her interior life that she was gifted with, like we know of others. Other extraordinary saints had those kind of blessings.
I read an episode about her husband, meeting her husband. Wasn't she even told how she would meet her husband?
Yes, she was told. I mean, it's a very long and beautiful story, which I think we would be better saved for another day. But I can summarize it in the sense that she was sent to Rome there she is indicated to her through the mediation of St. John Bosco that she would meet her husband on November 1st. The year was not specified, and that he would be wearing a sword. And so so it unfolded in that way. And she met J.O.B. and Keeney on that day, November 1st. And the sword that was part of the prophecy, or part of the indication, the sign, was very ironic, because J.O.B. and Keeney, at that time, young man, he was a member of this guard, this unit of guards they were ceremonial guards, would wear uniforms with a sword, and they would accompany cardinals for special services that they had in the churches in Rome. And so he was part of that guard. So Maria Esperanza met him on the 1st, but later saw him then in his uniform with the sword, and that's when it was, it was clear to her that this was the one that God had chosen for her, because they had to have a mission together. I mean, the Lord wanted her to be married. That was the will of God. She tried it. She entered a convent first, but that wasn't God's plan, and he made that clear. And so the man who was going to accompany her on this extraordinary mission that she would have, both as a mother and wife, but also as this missionary, would have to be the right man. And so the Lord arranged it and gave the indications to Maria Esperanza so that would happen that way.
Didn't she know Padre Pio?
Yes, when she entered the convent in the far western end of Venezuela, and was only there maybe a week or 10 days, and it was indicated to her through Saint Teresa of Lisieux that she was not supposed to be a nun, although she dearly wanted to give her life to the Lord in that fashion. She was directed to go to Rome. She's in her she's in her early 20s, and now she's in the 1950s. There wasn't a lot of young people, anybody really traveled that much, but she went to Rome as a young girl, and there she had some contacts, and she was staying with some nuns in Rome. And when she was there, she met a couple, the Coleys, who were very good friends with Padre Pio. And so they insisted on introducing her to Padre Pio, and he became then her spiritual director during that period in Rome for a while. But it was so far, San Giovanni Rotondo was so far from Rome that he eventually directed Maria Esperanza to Father Capello, who was a very famous spiritual director, Jesuit priest at the time in Rome, and guided Maria Esperanza through the mystical life.
Now, did I read correctly? Did she get the stigmata at some point in her life?
Much later in her life, she had the stigmata on Good Friday's visible stigmata, only on that day.
And did Padre Pio, was he involved in that, or not really?
Well, there was a kind of a transfer, if you will, when the day that Padre Pio died in September 1968, I forget the exact day, but Maria Esperanza was in Venezuela, and she woke up and understood herself to be receiving a visit from Padre Pio, either verbally or even seeing him. I think it was more verbally, whatever. And he said to her, he said, I am leaving, and now you are, now you will be the consolation. You will be the consolation for the people of God. In so many words, those are not exact words, as if you were passing the scepter on to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, at that moment, she was discovered that he in fact passed away. And so there was this kind of sense of that God was going to continue to be with his people in the extraordinary ways that he was with Padre Pio, but now in the person of Maria Esperanza. And it turned out to be so. So many thousands and thousands of souls were touched and consoled and healed and converted and encouraged and sustained, sometimes with just a single 5-minute meeting with Maria Esperanza.
Now, Let's talk about the Blessed Mother. Were the messages for Maria alone, or were they for the whole world? And what were those, the gist of those messages?
Maria Esperanza was the one only one who received them, but they were for the world. And the message that the theme of the message is reconciliation. That is to say that the world had become so fractured, human family had become so fractured on every level. We're fractured. You see this today, right? Fractured politically, economically. We're fractured religiously. We're fractured socially. But most of all, most painfully, we're fractured in the family. And so this message of Our Lady is so timely that comes to us, when Our Lady appeared in Betania. She came under the title Reconciler of All Peoples and Nations. And this is the message that she wanted to communicate through Maria Esperanza to the world, that we had to reconcile, fraternal reconciliation, and the healing of the family, because the only really way that society is going to be healed and reconciled is when the family is healed. The family is the basic cell of society. Society passes by way of the family. When the family is broken, society is broken. When the family is united and healthy, society is healthy. And so in her very mission, Maria Esperanza, her family is an example of family unity, of what a Christian family can be. And so that's the message she brought with her, was a message of great hope, great joy, but also a clear message that unity and reconciliation, fraternal reconciliation, were critical if we were to ever achieve peace as a humanity.
How did she describe what the Blessed Mother looks like?
Well, there's a few. The description, one of the beautiful descriptions, is in my my biography of Maria Esperanza. I don't, I would refer people to that. Off the top of my head, I don't exactly know that. I wouldn't be able to quote any features that specific features, because I don't want to misrepresent or mislead anybody. But my biography, entitled Maria Esperanza and the Grace of Betania, is there's a section in there about the main apparition that occurred in on March 25th, 1984. And subsequent to that, when Maria Esperanza was giving her testimony to the Bishop Pio on these extraordinary events, she described in a letter the nature of Our Lady, what the contours and what she looked like when she came. She wasn't the only visionary that day, though. That particular day, the March 25th, 1984 vision, was 150 people saw Our Lady on that day. And they all can recall what she looked like, family members and other spiritual sons and daughters of Maria Esperanza. So, but I couldn't, give you a description like off the top of my head, and I don't want to misquote. Right?
Give that name of that again. Is that still in print, or how can people get that?
Yes, it's called Maria Esperanza and the Grace of Betania. I authored that. That's the first biography of Maria Esperanza, and it can be obtained through www.betania2.org. 2 as in number 2.
Betania.
www.betania2.org, and that is how you can, for people who are interested in obtaining that book, that's how they would acquire it.
What did the Blessed Mother ask, other than people try to reconcile? Did she talk about, reparation? Was there fasting or?
Well, her principal encouragement was the rosary, family rosary, the return to the sacraments and penance and Eucharist and so forth. But she said that this family unity, that she wasn't just giving a dictum, like, go fix your family. Your family's broken. Your families are broken. Go fix it. No, rather she said, essentially, as Bishop Pio says, Our Lady's was more a question of Our Lady's presence than her words. But what she wanted to say and communicate to everyone was that she came to help us reconcile our families and reconcile with people that were estranged from. She wasn't just a directive, an order to go fix your families. Good luck. Hope you can do it. It was rather that now begin the process of healing, and I'm going to be there to be the intercessor and advocate of that healing. So turning to Our Lady as the source of the healing for the family.
Was there any unusual mystical experiences she had other than the apparitions, which are unique? And
so many, Brian, so many. I mean, all of the classic, the people would, in her presence, in Maria Esperanza's presence, people would experience the scent of roses. There would be the appearance of mystical appearance of rose petals. There would be she had the gift to read souls. She had the gift of, there were occasions that, it appears she had the gift of bilocation. She had the gift of healing, the gift of deliverance. She had the gift of discernment of spirits. She had the gift of being able to discern objects if they were blessed or not, or evil or not. She had just the whole array of mystical gifts that we have read about in the extraordinary mystics of the church over the centuries.
Wasn't there one apparition where several thousand saw the Blessed Mother?
Well, no, there was one apparition in which about 150 people saw Our Lady, but after that, when that that exploded onto the scene in Betania, many pilgrims began to make pilgrimages to Betania, and many of them saw Our Lady. And so the Bishop Pio said in his conclusive letter on Betania, which declared it to be of authentic and supernatural nature. He said that he estimated somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people saw Our Lady, but the definitive one, and that they were brief visions of Our Lady at Betania, but the turning point, the one that was so critical, was the one that occurred on March 25th, 1984, because that covered a couple of hours. Over a couple of hours, Lady appeared on 7 occasions for 5 or 7 minutes each, except for the last apparition, in which she appeared for 30 minutes, and they thought Our Lady was never going to leave them. So that was in church history, that was one of the extraordinary apparitions approved by the church.
Yeah, that's real important to note, Father. As you said, it's approved, and I believe it's the 4th apparition of the Blessed Mother approved in this last century. And now, wasn't there a Eucharistic miracle in Betania as well?
There was. Again, after the major apparition, March 25th, 1984, which, by the way, coincided with the Pope's consecration. JP2 consecrated the whole world to Our Lady in Rome on that day, brought over the statue of Fatima from Rome, from Fatima to Rome for that consecration. There was this, people started to come in big crowds, right? And so Bishop Pio authorized a mass to be celebrated there on feast days and Sundays. And there was a priest by the name of Father Odie, who was a member of the clergy of Los Teques, the diocese where Betania is located, of which Bishop Pio was at that time the ordinary. And he was celebrating mass. A large crowd was there that day. Maria Esperanza was there. And when he was celebrating mass, he noticed as he performed the fractio panis, the breaking of the bread, that it looked like a red, first it looked like a red dot, but then it grew larger and it looked like the host was bleeding. And so he put that portion of the host down and didn't really say anything to anybody, and later showed it. Bishop Pio then was required to examine this host and the portion that seemed to be stained with a red fluid of some sort, to see whether this was an authentic Eucharistic miracle or not. And he had it examined by several top-notch forensic scientists in Caracas and different communities of the scientific world, of the scientific community. Different members of the scientific community examined it, and they declared that it was human blood. And so to this day, it's no longer that host is still maintained in a monstrance in a convent in Los Teques, in the Diocese of Los Teques. And it's quite a distance. It's about a 2-hour drive, I think, from Betania, but nevertheless, pilgrims do make that journey there to go and venerate the Eucharistic miracle. So the Bishop Pio had to recognize the fact that there was something supernatural here. That how could human blood appear in that host, and how is the host continue to be maintained today with that blood stain on it? And so that occurred, I think, in 91, 2, somewhere around there, and so that's what 30 some years now, right? No, 40, 30, yeah, 30 some years.
Now, getting back, so you met Maria Esperanza, and then what led you in your heart to feel you were going to get involved with the beatification process?
Well, I really didn't get too involved with Maria Esperanza, other than I had some beautiful moments of private visits with her, because, like I say, my friends were the ones who hosted her when she was in town. I might join them for dinner. I might have the opportunity to see Maria Esperanza privately, wherever she was staying for a while, and you have when you encounter somebody like that, you have the sense of the extraordinary spirituality that lays deep within them. Well, I really wasn't too involved with her, except then it happened in 2004. In March of 2004, Maria Esperanza was in New Jersey. I wasn't even aware of it, in fact, but her health was declining very, very rapidly under the conditions of Parkinson's illness, and it seemed like they were going to lose her. She had trouble breathing and was organs were starting to shut down. So she was at Long Beach Island, New Jersey, and the family took her to the Southern Ocean County Memorial Hospital not far from Long Beach Island. And since they thought they were going to lose her, my friends called me and asked me if I would come and anoint her, celebrate Mass for her in her ICU unit, which they permitted us to do. And so I did that. And Maria Esperanza, then a few days later, she made a little recovery and went back to home in Long Beach Island. And I started to go up to celebrate Mass for her and her family. Meantime, all of her family came in from Venezuela. They weren't sure what was going to happen with her. And all her children, their spouses, and her grandchildren. They were staying in a large house of a friend in Long Beach Island. And so every evening I would go out, not initially every evening, I would go out once a week, then twice a week, and many other priests as well. We would celebrate Mass for everybody gathered there at that occasion was the entire family plus other visitors who were coming. And Maria Esperanza was there. And then towards the end, I'd say that maybe the last 2 weeks of her life, she died on August 4th, 2004. I say the last 2 weeks of her life, I was up there every night and celebrating Mass or concelebrating Mass. And I, as Providence would have it, on August the 6th, that evening around 9 o'clock or so, when I celebrated the Mass, that was her last Mass and her last time she received Holy Communion. She died at 4:36 a.m., I think, the following morning on the 7th. And she was immediately, the family had a funeral director come in, and she was immediately embalmed and brought back to the house, because there was now going to be about a 2-week delay to get her back down to Venezuela till all the the legalities and paperwork was provided to transport the body. So we continued to have those Masses, and that's when my relationship with her and her family was solidified. After that, 2004, after Maria Esperanza was returned, her body was returned and buried there, I started to make regular visits down to Venezuela, to visit her family and visit the grave of Maria Esperanza. And I was going down maybe 2-3 times a year. So when it came time for the cause to be proposed, it seemed fitting to the family and the Betania Foundation that I could serve in that capacity. So that's what I did.
Now, her work kind of lives on, if I read correctly. What's going on in Betania right now with her family?
Well, of course, she established a foundation to carry on her mission, her spiritual mission, promotion of reconciliation, family unity, life of prayer and closeness, and working for the church and so forth. And that community is hundreds of people in Venezuela. And also there are about 22, 3, I forget exactly how many now, but there's somewhere around 20 plus communities around the world, different locations, Spain, Rome, a number in the United States, Peru, Argentina. There was one developing in France. I don't know if there's one in England. So these communities are basically prayer groups, prayer communities that live and express the spirituality of Betania, Maria Esperanza, reconciliation, family unity, and try to spread that in the spirit in which Maria Esperanza did that very work herself. So this momentum, or this spirituality, continues to have great life and effect in the church in beautiful ways. And the family, as you know, the family has fallen on hard times, and the healing of the family is so important at this moment. And to have this message and this spirituality, this family spirituality, and this hope of the help of Our Lady to heal the family, it has survived Maria Esperanza now. She died in 2004, right? So we're coming up on 20 years, and seems to be only flourishing and growing.
Now, are there materials in English to guide these groups, or what do the groups actually do?
Well, all those things could be obtained. Plenty of information about Maria Esperanza on www.mariaesperanza.org, www.betania.org. These two sites are from the Betania Foundation themselves, and they promote as much as possible spirituality. There's a newsletter, there's prayer cards, there are prayer books, not so easily obtainable, but she did compose numerous prayers and chaplets. There is the biography that I mentioned, and so word continues to get out, and there's a great interest in obtaining these beautiful statues of Our Lady Reconciler of all peoples and nations, which they're kind of rare at the moment because of the COVID and the ability to get them manufactured and shipped, but they are a real treasure. Let me tell you, people like to have them.
Are they available through those websites, or how would a person get the statue of Our Lady?
The statue, I'm not sure that. I think until the COVID passes, we're not going to be able to do too much about that. But the other materials that I mentioned would go either to the two websites I just mentioned, www.mariaesperanza.org, www.betania.org, and then for the biography, again, www.betania2 as number 2, Betania, 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 Betania 2.org.
Now, what's up with the progression of the beatification? Has there been a miracle, or are you waiting on a miracle, or what?
Well, the beatification cause was open in the Diocese of Metuchen, New Jersey on January 31st, 2010. And we started off with some pretty strong momentum, and then there was a change of personnel in various places, and things kind of slowed down. But I'm very, very happy to report now that the cause has gained new legs, new enthusiasm, new momentum in the Archdiocese of Caracas. So that's the great news that we're happy to be able to report.
Good.
But in terms of, you can't really give any timing or dates on anything like that. You can't really say, it takes X number of months, X number of years. It's all very providential, how God highlights given souls, and where the fame of sanctity, where the Catholics, ordinary Catholics, kind of galvanize around a given person and appreciate the fact that they lived a life of heroic virtue that's worth imitating, as well as seeking her intercession, or the person's intercession, for favors from heaven, and seeing those favors multiply as they are. Maria Esperanza is a powerful intercessor, graces and favors being granted in many, many ways through her intercession. So these are the what shall we say, the concrete evidence that God is pointing to Maria Esperanza. At the same time, there's, as you know, hundreds of causes before the church right now, before the Congregation of Causes of Saints. So how they get prioritized, and who, how the Holy Spirit highlights one, this one or that one, to kind of work its way through the system rather rapidly. And these are all matters that are in the hands of God. Why we cannot calculate that.
Well, Father, any closing thoughts before we wrap up today's show of Mercy Unbound on Maria Esperanza?
Well, I think it behooves everyone to take an interest in this person's life, Maria Esperanza, especially, as I say, she was such a gracious woman, such a loving woman, and filled with these extraordinary mystical gifts, but yet never used them only at the service of God, and never exalted them or herself. She's a wonderful model of motherhood, and her family is a wonderful model of family life. While we are laboring under many attacks on the family today, she's a great defender of the family, and a great intercessor and promoter of the family life. And through that, we can even begin. We say, how is humanity going to reconcile? It's a mess, right? How are we going to create unity in humanity? Well, we start with our own families, one family at a time. And as Our Lady helps us to heal one family at a time, then slowly and slowly, society is healed. Or it can happen rapidly. There can be a major wake up, a major recognition of, well, what have we been doing? We've lost the sense of the sacredness of marriage, the sacredness of human sexuality, the sacredness of the family life, the sacredness of the conception and rearing of children. And you could even have a mass awakening on those issues. And so how do we climb out of that? With the help of Our Lady, reconciler of all peoples and nations. So I would recommend families, and all families, to look to her as an intercessor, as a guide, as a helper, as a model in this day and age.
Well, Father, I really appreciate you joining me today on Mercy Unbound. All the best in the work up in New Jersey, and God bless you for your work. And people, hope you enjoyed today's show. Subscribe and share with your friends and contacts, and God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Brian, and God bless your work too.
Thank you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video portion. The podcast can be heard at anchor.fm/Dr. Brian, Bryan Thatcher, Thatcher, and on all the major podcast forums. I would love to speak at your church or conference, and please consider supporting our efforts to spread the truth to a hurting world. Thank you again. And for more information, go to the website at drbrianthatcher.com.